The story opens with an unexpected confession. He has somehow ended up married to his own classmate. To make matters worse, she isn't just any ordinary student, but his absolute archenemy. As Cookie Sakita turns away with a sharp glare, Akira makes his feelings entirely clear, stating that he despises her and considers her the worst person at school. At school, a crowd of students gathers around the bulletin board, buzzing with chatter as the latest exam results reveal Saito Hoju in first place once again, closely followed by Akane Sakramori in second. As classmates whisper about how he has held the top spot since their first year, Saito casually walks past the hallway without even glancing at the rankings. 18-year-old third-year student Saito Hoju continues walking, completely unfazed by the praise from his classmates. To him, wasting time staring at a leaderboard makes no sense when that time could be spent studying. Just as he considers his usual interests in literature, gaming, and protein powder, angry footsteps echo behind him, instantly catching his attention. Akane Sakramori storms toward him with an intense, furious glare, perfectly representing the one thing he hates most. Without hesitation, she marches right up to Saito and aggressively yanks him by the tie, sparks practically flying between them. Choking from her grip, Saito defensively counters that simply paying attention in class should be enough to remember textbook material. Akane Sakramori tears up in sheer frustration, yelling at him in disbelief over how he managed to beat her on the exams without even studying. She snaps back that nobody has a memory that good, only for Saito to bluntly assert that his actually is. Akira admits that she is undeniably pretty, and that everyone around school says she could easily be a model. Even after he retreats into the classroom, Akane barges straight through the door and slams her hands onto his desk to keep the confrontation going. Despite her looks, she has earned a reputation around school as the stay-away-from-me nightmare, immediately chewing him out for how poorly he filled out yesterday's class diary. She demands to know why he left sections blank and wrote almost nothing in the comments, but Saito casually brushes it off since everything went exactly as scheduled. She continues listing all the classroom chores he neglected, only for an exhausted Saito to sigh in defeat as she relentlessly lectures him. Saito mutters to himself that she is an absolute pain to deal with. Akane aggressively waves her arms, yelling that she is only trying to whip his sloppy attitude into shape, but he completely dismisses her. Saito clarifies that his hatred for her didn't come out of nowhere, looking back on how they have ended up in the same class every single year since their first year. A brief trip down memory lane shows that she has badgered him every single day, scolding him during choir competitions, micromanaging how he cleans, and checking over every chore like a strict stepmother. Staring directly at her persistent glare, Saito makes it clear that he is completely sick and tired of her constantly coming after him. A classmate named Himari suddenly gloms onto Akane from behind, teasingly telling her to let the guy off the hook, though Saito firmly insists he isn't crying. When Himari innocently asks why she is always getting on Saito's case, the room falls silent as neither of them can come up with an answer. Akane admits she has never thought about why, and simply wants to crush him under her shoe whenever she sees him, solidifying their status as natural-born enemies. Sato's cousin, Shizui, approaches with an armful of candy from the other girls in class and sympathetically pats him on the head, asking if he is fighting with Akane again. Shizui then innocently wonders if Akane is just being mean because she has a crush on him, sending Akane into a flustered, blushing panic. Furious at the suggestion, the two butt heads in outrage, with Akane shouting that she wouldn't touch him if he were the last boy on Earth, while Saito fires back that he wouldn't date her even if the fate of the world depended on it. After school ends, Saito finally walks out of the building, letting out a sigh of relief as he celebrates being free at last, when his phone suddenly rings. Checking the caller screen, he sees that the incoming call is from his grandfather. Answering the phone, his grandfather greets him with a grin, asking if he is free for a little quality time. Saito tries to decline by saying he wants to read a book, but his grandfather playfully reminds him that he could afford to suck up a little more, since he is set to inherit his company. When Saito offers a completely deadpan, sarcastic compliment, his grandfather chuckles slyly over the line. The playful tone suddenly shifts as his grandfather ominously reminds him that if he is truly that smart, he should know exactly who is in charge. Right on cue, a massive black limousine screeches to a halt beside him as his grandfather jokingly tells him over the phone to get in and nobody gets hurt, prompting Saito to ask if he is turned into a supervillain. Collapsing into the luxury seat after an exhausting day, Saito listens as the driver politely apologizes on his boss's behalf, explaining that the dramatic entrance is just his way of showing affection because he has such high hopes for him. Saito scoffs that anyone who kidnaps their own grandson on the way home from school must have scrambled brains, though the driver playfully points out the fine line between madness and brilliance. His grandfather, Tenryu Hojo, is indeed a legendary figure who single-handedly rescued the family business from the brink of financial ruin 40 years ago. Defying all criticism, he restructured the Hojo Group into one of Japan's leading IT ventures, remaining at the cutting edge of AI research and development even in his old age. Upon arriving at the traditional restaurant venue, Saito is stunned to find Akane pointing at him in shock, demanding to know what he is doing there. Both sit outside in complete irritation, with Akane complaining about her awful luck while trying to have a nice meal with her grandmother, a sentiment Saito wholeheartedly shares. Saito simply asks to be left alone so he can read in peace, but Akane furiously barks back that she never wanted his attention in the first place. Leaning right into his face, she declares that she refuses to leave until he gives her an apology, which only irritates him further. Their shouting echoes into the sky as Saito asks if she plans to bother him forever, only for Akane to promise that she will haunt him relentlessly until he apologizes. Getting right up in each other's faces with sparks flying, both continue trading furious insults over who is being the bigger pain. Their bickering is interrupted when an elderly couple pulls up in a luxury sports car, warmly greeting them and remarking on their youthful energy. Lowering his sunglasses, Saito's grandfather playfully asks why they look so shocked and tells them to get moving. Both Saito and Akane exchange confused looks, wondering why they are being addressed together. The realization suddenly hits them both at once as Saito recognizes his grandfather standing right alongside Akane's grandmother. Inside the restaurant, Saito's grandfather raises a beer in high spirits alongside Akane's smiling grandmother, cheerfully calling for a toast to celebrate the auspicious day. Meanwhile, Saito and Akane sit in absolute misery under a cloud of gloom, reluctantly sipping their drinks in dead silence. Akane orders another drink while Saito tries to figure out what his grandfather meant by an auspicious day, noticing that bodyguards are already stationed at the door cutting off any chance of escape. Saito points out how quickly she has been downing orange juices, only for Akane to snap back that his presence ruins her appetite, leading him to mockingly wonder if it's her scent that makes him sick too. The two plaster on fake smiles and burst into sarcastic laughter, openly wishing that the other would simply crumble to dust and disappear first. Completely misinterpreting their hostile banter, Sato's grandfather bursts into laughter and cheerfully declares that the two of them are as thick as thieves, leaving both students completely flabbergasted. Picking up his food, Saito finally cuts to the chase, demanding to know the real reason they were brought here and why Akane's grandmother is present. Rather than answering right away, the two grandparents simply look at one another and nod in fond agreement. With radiant smiles across their faces, Sato's grandfather drops the bombshell announcement that the two of them should get married. The proposal leaves both of them completely stunned, freezing them in place with wide-eyed disbelief as their food drops straight from their chopsticks. Saito nervously laughs it off, wondering if there is some hidden metaphor or cipher behind his grandfather's words, but Tenryu bluntly tells him not to overthink it and just marry her. Akane shouts in disbelief that they are only high schoolers, yet her grandmother, Chiyo, calmly smiles and reminds her that 18 is plenty old enough. Fanning himself as he dives into their backstory, Tenryu reveals that he and Chiyo go way back and were deeply smitten with each other in their youth, even if life ultimately took them in different directions. Tenryu reminisces about losing his wife 10 years ago, while Chiyo cheerfully admits that after losing her husband, she has been spending her nights at Tenryu's place, prompting a horrified Akane to beg them to stop sharing details. With an intense, dark aura surrounding them, the two elders confess that while they don't regret their previous marriages, they want their grandkids to live out the romantic dream they never could. Chiyo then turns toward Akane with an unsettling, wide-eyed smile, exerting heavy family pressure as she asks if she will do this for her grandmother. Akane passionately rejects the idea, blushing furiously as she declares that marriage is supposed to happen through love and mutual choice after a romantic proposal. She firmly insists that getting married is never something anyone should do just because they're told to. Saito agrees completely, reminding the elders that forced marriage is legally impossible and telling them to drop the subject. Instead of backing down, both grandparents merely sit in the shadows, chuckling ominously at the young couple's defiance. Tenryu chuckles knowingly and claps his hands, prompting a bodyguard to lead a scruffy, panting stray dog into the room. He lays down an absurd ultimatum, threatening Saito that if he refuses to obey, he will leave the entire Ojou group company to this dog instead. As the foul odor fills the room, the bodyguard bluntly notes that having found the stray on the street, he might not be the best fit for the role, though Saito points out the obvious absurdity. Tenryu nonchalantly takes a bite of his food and suggests the dog could simply stamp documents with an inked paw, while Saito angrily points out that animals legally cannot sign binding contracts. Crushing a lobster shell in his bare hand with a sinister grin, Tenryu threatens to let the entire Ojou group company collapse right here instead. Taunting his grandson about how much he looked forward to taking over the company, Tenryu leaves Saito sitting in sheer disbelief, asking if he has completely lost his mind. Tenryu glares with intense, crazed eyes, asking Saito if he honestly believes a sane person could build and run an empire like his. The overwhelming pressure leaves both Saito and Akane frozen in terrified silence. Chiyo then beckons Akane over and whispers something sinister into her ear, causing Akane's face to pale with sheer dread. With knowing smirks, the two elders advise them to think long and hard about what is truly best for their futures. Tenryu holds up 3 fingers and delivers a strict deadline, giving Saito and Akane just 3 days to make up their minds, leaving Saito trembling at how little time they have. Akane trembles with an intensely blushing, anxious expression as she laments how utterly ridiculous the situation is, while the narrative notes that while marriage is usually the happy ending in other stories, for the two of them, it feels like an entirely different trial. Overcome with embarrassment and outrage, Akane steams like a boiling kettle and screams that she wouldn't marry him in a million years. Saito deadpants that her outburst settles that, remarking that this entire ordeal marks a decidedly unhappy beginning. Saito's mind wanders into a fever dream fantasy where a sweet, affectionate Akane in sleepwear reaches out to welcome him to bed as her darling. Reality immediately shatters the illusion as Akane grabs him in a violent chokehold, shaking him furiously while screaming why she ever has to marry him. Saito suddenly bolts upright in bed, panting heavily from the nightmare. Looking toward the morning window, he groans in exhaustion, complaining about what a horrible start to the day it is when he can't even escape Akane in his own dreams. Sitting on the edge of his bed, Saito scratches his head and sighs, knowing full well where that nightmare came from. The entire ordeal flashes through his head: the sudden marriage demand, Tenryu threatening to destroy the family business, and the strict 3-day deadline, making it crystal clear that this is all his grandfather's calculated scheme. As he gets dressed for school, Saito reflects on the brutal ultimatum between inheriting the company and marriage, shivering at the steep price of getting stuck with a girl like Akane. In his mind, Akane looms over him like a terrifying demon queen ruling over her dark domain. Saito dreads the idea of getting constantly chewed out for the rest of his life, certain that living with her would inevitably lead to a total nervous breakdown. Gritting his teeth in fierce determination, he resolves that there is simply no way he can ever go through with the marriage. As day 1 arrives, Saito slides open the classroom door and spots Akane inside. When he tentatively tries to speak to her, Akane immediately whips her head away with a stubborn, huffy scowl. His cousin Shizai suddenly steps up and stares him down, pointing out that trying to talk to Akane is completely new behavior and noting he has been acting strange since yesterday, causing a flustered Saito to nervously claim she is imagining things as homeroom begins. Later that day, outside the guidance counselor's office, Akane stands in the quiet school hallway, intently examining an informational pamphlet. She sighs softly while reading through details on scholarships, but when Saito coincidentally walks by and catches her, she quickly turns away to hide what she's doing. Catching up to her, Saito asks what her grandmother whispered to her yesterday, but a startled Akane instantly flares up and snaps that it's none of his business. Saito argues that they're in a fight for their lives and asks what dirt her grandmother has on her so they don't lose, but Akane angrily retorts that she doesn't owe him an explanation. Crossing her arms, Akane glares sharply at him, warning Saito that this isn't an opportunity to worm his way into her life. As Akane hastily storms down the hallway stairs, Saito dismissively mutters whatever, frustrated that any hope of them teaming up has vanished. On day 2, Saito sits at his classroom desk and lets out a heavy sigh as the pressure of the deadline sets in. Desperately trying to brainstorm a workaround, he writes how to inherit the company without getting married in his notebook, frustrated that there has to be another way. He introduces his cousin and classmate, Ojou Shizai, noting that while she feels practically like a sister, involving her in his marriage crisis would only make things worse as she suspiciously observes him. Sitting directly behind him, Shizai fixes him with an intense, unblinking glare, leaving a sweating Saito completely on edge. After school, as the sports clubs practice outside, Saito returns to the empty classroom, muttering that he's losing his edge after forgetting his phone. Just as he picks up his phone, he hears footsteps at the doorway as a girl enters, apologizing to Akane for missing her call yesterday due to work. Panicking at their arrival, Saito instinctively dives behind a podium to hide, listening as Akane brushes off the missed call as nothing urgent. Crouched in hiding, Saito curses his impulsive reflex before suddenly feeling something soft and realizing his hand is rubbing against a bare leg. Saito's eyes go wide as he looks up to find Shizai curled up under the podium, casually wearing animal finger puppets as his hand rests right against her bare stomach. Shizai nonchalantly asks if he wants to play, while an utterly flabbergasted Saito desperately hushes her and whispers in a panic, asking what she is doing hiding down there. Outside the podium, Akane hesitantly approaches her friend Himari, looking nervous and deeply conflicted as she prepares to speak. Akane nervously asks Himari hypothetically if she would ever marry someone she didn't love, just because her family ordered her to, while a trapped Saito panics under the podium at hearing her bring up the topic. Himari blushes happily and replies that she would refuse, confessing that she is already in love with someone else. Akane immediately gets excited and demands to know who it is, but Himari shyly covers her face and keeps it a secret, all while Saito and Shizai remain trapped beneath the desk eavesdropping. When Himari turns the question back on Akane to ask if she has feelings for anyone, Akane looks entirely blank and confused, prompting Himari to take it as a definite no. Himari cheerfully rationalizes that if there are no feelings involved, there's no real harm, seeing marriage as essentially gaining an economical, free roommate. Blushing bright red with embarrassment, Akane begins mumbling under her breath about what a married couple would still have to do together, leaving Himari confused by her incoherent rambling. Completely flustered and blushing from head to toe, Akane finally blurts out at the top of her lungs that you would still have to sleep with them if you got married. Stuck hiding right beneath her, a bright red and thoroughly scandalized Saito reacts in utter shock, while Shizai quietly waves her bare puppet beside him. When Shizai nonchalantly packs up her toys to head home, Saito frantically grabs and restrains her, terrified that if Akane catches him eavesdropping, she will straight up murder him. Himari casually points out that arranged marriages are all about producing successors, wildly guessing that the family might want around 100. Akane screeches in horror as her imagination spirals out of control, picturing 3 entire classrooms packed with babies. Himari cheerfully encourages her by suggesting she could just have 10 sets of decuplets, causing a mortified Akane to protest that her body isn't built for that, which makes Himari suddenly suspicious about why she is taking the topic so seriously. Clenching her fists with a beet-red face and swirly eyes, Akane frantically yells that the scenario is purely hypothetical. Playing along with a bright smile, Himari winks and pivots back to giving advice for what Akane should do if such a situation ever happened to her. Himari cheerfully offers to lend Akane a magazine featuring bedroom tips and romantic advice. Completely short-circuiting with embarrassment, Akane screams at the top of her lungs that she doesn't need it. Yelling that she is never getting married, Akane flees the classroom in a full sprint while Himari calls after her. Saito sighs in relief that they weren't caught, only to turn around and find Shizai silently staring right into his soul. Shizai looks at Saito knowingly, pointing out that he has been acting completely out of whack for the past couple of days, and demanding to know what's wrong. Pointing directly at her forehead, Shizai explains that he always furrows his brow whenever something is bothering him, declaring that she's worried and won't let him leave until he tells her what's going on. Saito tries to play it off casually with a shrug, claiming nothing is wrong at all, but Shizai immediately calls out his lie. Giving in, Saito scratches his head and sighs as he confesses that their grandfather hit him with a wild dilemma, prompting Shizai to ask what kind of wild situation it is. Saito explains that if he wants to inherit the company, he has to sacrifice his personal freedom, otherwise, his grandfather threatened to hand the entire business over to a dog. Shizai nonchalantly notes that such an outrageous threat sounds entirely typical of their grandfather, while a weary Saito sighs in agreement. Leaning in, Shizai directly asks him to make a choice between keeping his freedom or running the company. When Saito admits he is stubbornly aiming for both, Shizai places a quiet finger against his lips and calls him out for being greedy. Shizai walks over to the classroom aquarium and taps on the glass, musing that nobody is ever truly free since the entire world is bound by rules. Explaining that they are tied to their own instincts down to their cells, Shizai advises him not to escape the rules but to manipulate them to his benefit. When Saito asks if she means he should take the company, she says only if he wants to, promising she'd even dumpster dive with him if he ended up broke, a loyalty Saito frantically rejects. Shizai looks at Saito with unwavering earnestness, promising that she will never get in his way, will stand by him through every hardship, and encourages him to lean on her anytime. Framed against the sunlight, she acknowledges that he needs to inherit the company to achieve his true dreams. Saito softly thanks Shizai with a warm smile, privately reflecting that Sakuramori's own reluctance might help avert the entire crisis if he is ultimately forced to make the painful choice between his personal freedom and the family business. The third and final day of the deadline arrives, with the homeroom teacher handing out career path surveys to the class. Akane looks down anxiously at her career path preference form, visibly troubled by the future laid out before her. Resting his chin on his hand, Saito stares ahead in contemplative silence, pondering whether he should chase his dream. Leaving school at the end of the day, Saito and Akane walk out into the courtyard, weighing the heavy choice between their lifelong ambitions and their personal freedom. Waiting right outside the school gates is a sleek black limousine, with a suited chauffeur holding the door open to escort them to the final meeting. Akane tightly clutches her career path survey form against her chest, steeling her resolve despite the anxiety weighing on her. Facing the moment of truth, Saito hardens his expression, fully aware that it has finally come down to making an unavoidable choice. Inside the Grand Tenryu Manor, Saito and Akane sit formally on the tatami floor facing their seated grandparents. Tenryu points forward dramatically with his folded fan, demanding to know what future they have chosen, whether they will take the path of fools or the path of sages. With their heads bowed and eyes closed, Saito and Akane speak simultaneously, each declaring that they have finally made their decision. Sitting side by side on their cushions, Saito and Akane look up together and announce in unison that they will get married. A surprised Saito turns to Akane and asks if she's serious, admitting he was certain she would say no, which flusters Akane as she defends that the situation isn't that simple. Blushing furiously, Akane aggressively warns him not to get the wrong idea or think for a single second that she actually has feelings for him. Tenryu roars with laughter and triumph, while Chiyo dabs happy tears with a handkerchief, congratulating Akane that she can finally rest easy. Assuming the matter is handled, Saito grabs his school bag and suggests scheduling the wedding for after high school graduation, only for Tenryu to question what on earth he's talking about. With an innocent, cheerful grin, Tenryu casually reveals that the wedding is actually taking place as soon as possible. The grandparents lead them to a glistening, two-story modern house, proudly announcing that they've already set up a brand new home for the pair. Saito and Akane stand completely paralyzed with their jaws dropped in disbelief, looking at the pristine flower garden and dedicated covered parking area. Both drop their school bags in utter shock as Tenryu and Chiyo beam happily, presenting the custom-built love nest prepared exclusively for the newlyweds. Having completely bypassed normal milestones like crushes, asking each other out, and dating, the two find themselves thrown straight into the reality of marriage. Trembling with a beet-red face and lethal glare, Akane fiercely warns Saito not to even dream of trying to make a move on her. Completely exhausted and with his soul practically leaving his body, Saito barely registers her threats as they transition immediately into full-blown marriage and cohabitation. Saito reflects on having married his high school classmate, and worst of all, his sworn archenemy, as Akane angrily glares at him before stomping away down the hallway. Yanking Saito forcefully by his necktie, Akane fiercely threatens with lethal intensity that if he tells any of their classmates about the marriage, she will straight up murder him. Saito retorts that keeping it secret benefits him too, but a trembling and flustered Akane immediately rejects his reasoning as total nonsense. Trembling and blushing furiously with tears brimming in her eyes, Akane accuses Saito of planning to brag to the whole school that they share a bed. Raising his hands to swear that he won't say a word, Saito yawns in exhaustion, mentally reflecting back on what was effectively their wedding night. After revealing the sparkling new house, Chiyo casually adds that she already took the liberty of officially filing their marriage registration, sending Saito and Akane into full-blown shock. Telling the young newlyweds to have fun, Tenryu and Chiyo speed off into the sunset in a sporty convertible. Akane collapses to her knees, reaching out in tears, desperately pleading with her grandmother not to abandon her. Stepping inside the quiet foyer of their new home, Saito is still dazed by the reality that they are already legally married. Standing with her head down and visibly trembling, Akane begins anxiously questioning what he plans to do. Saito turns back with a deadpan expression, confused about what she could possibly mean. Tearful and intensely flushed, Akane panics that he will relentlessly have his way with her all night long until she can't even go to school, leaving Saito completely bewildered by her wild assumptions. Overwhelmed by paranoid delusions, Akane screams in agony while holding her burning cheeks, blurting out that she's talking about sex and insisting he knows it. Hissing defensively with animal-like fury and tears in her eyes, Akane brandishes a sharpened pencil directly at Saito, declaring that she isn't naive and that any boy in this position would have only one thing on his mind, before swearing it will never happen. Staring directly at the point of the pencil right in front of his face, a sweating Saito raises a defensive hand and frantically yells for her to cool it, promising he would never force her into anything. Akane keeps the pencil aimed straight at him, while slowly scooting backwards into the house to keep her distance from the bewildered Saito on the entryway floor. Slumping back against the front door with an exhausted sigh, Saito catches his breath and wonders if he will actually survive living together under these conditions. Carrying moving boxes shipped over by Tenryu up the stairs, Saito is relieved to find they at least have separate study rooms. After unpacking the last of the boxes, Saito sits down in the kitchen to catch his breath as the microwave goes off. Opening a delivery pizza box containing a note from his grandfather that reads, "You're probably too busy to cook." Dig in, Saito acknowledges that despite being a piece of work, his grandpa truly thinks of everything and says grace before eating. As Saito takes a bite of the pizza, Akane peeks out from around the doorframe with a blushing, drooling stare while her stomach loudly growls. Noticing her intense hunger, Saito holds out the open pizza box and casually offers to split it with her. Akane fiercely clenches her fist and screams in embarrassment that she refuses to act like a married couple, despite them already being legally wed. When Saito points out they still need to eat regardless of their status, Akane wildly misinterprets eating in a scandalous way, leaving Saito utterly flabbergasted by her leaps in logic. Sighing, Saito serves a warm slice of pizza onto a plate and coaxes her like an angry feline, telling her not to starve herself. Akane snatches the pizza slice at lightning speed and bolts back into her room, leading Saito to wryly compare her to an unfriendly stray cat. Opening the door to the bedroom in his pajamas, Saito sees an empty bed and assumes Akane decided to sleep in her study instead. He recalls Tenryu strictly demanding earlier that they must share the same bed without resorting to the sofa or floor, declaring that co-sleeping is what truly makes a marriage. Cautiously testing the mattress, Saito decides it's best not to underestimate his grandfather, suspecting the bed might be rigged with weight sensors or hidden surveillance cameras. Collapsing into bed with a heavy sigh, he reflects on how exhausting the day has been and how many lifetime-sized surprises were dumped on him at once. Noticing a novelty pillow with "Yes" printed boldly on both sides, an infuriated Saito chucks it straight into the trash, swearing to fire his grandfather the moment he takes over the presidency. Akane soaks in the warm bath with a towel wrapped on her head, bubbling into the water while still overwhelmed by how much has transpired over the past 24 hours. As Saito begins to drift off to sleep, hoping never to experience another chaotic day like this, the bedroom door suddenly creaks open, revealing Akane standing in the doorway. Saito's eyes snap wide open in shock as he freezes in bed, completely blindsided by her unexpected entrance. Dressed in her pajamas and blushing deeply, Akane fidgets nervously at the door before softly announcing that she's coming in. He tells her that his grandpa sent them a small bed. On the small bed, they are laying under the blanket very close to each other. He could smell the sweet odor from her. Lying back to back under the same blanket, Saito and Akane blush deeply with their hearts racing in the suffocating silence of their first night together. Flustered and breathing heavily, Akane warns him that while she agreed to marry him, she never signed up to sleep with him, threatening that he will suffer if he tries anything. Blushing intensely and covering her trembling mouth, Akane confesses through tearful eyes that she has no experience, has never had a boyfriend, and is still completely inexperienced. Saito's face instantly turns bright red with wide, panicked eyes as her candid confession catches him completely off guard. Overwhelmed by the sudden spike in intimacy, Saito realizes the sheer danger of their current predicament. Watching Akane fidget shyly under the covers, Saito acknowledges that while she is undeniably beautiful, she is still supposed to be his nemesis. Clutching his chest as his heart races uncontrollably, Saito struggles to maintain composure, frustrated that his rational mind knows better while his body reacts on its own. Flustered and looking away, Saito reassures her that there's no need to feel embarrassed because he's inexperienced too, prompting an awkward, relieved chuckle from Akane. Lying rigidly back to back, Saito feels the warmth of her body pressing against his through the covers and panics, realizing there is no way he can fall asleep like this. A sudden loud glug from the water dispenser breaks the tense silence of the bedroom, causing both Saito and Akane to jolt under the covers. Staring awake in a cold sweat while Akane rests facing away from him, Saito tries to convince himself to finally get some shut-eye. The digital clock on the headboard blinks past 1 a.m. as the late hour drags on in the quiet, dark room. Lying awake back-to-back in the dark bedroom, Saito breaks the silence by asking Akane why she agreed to the arranged marriage in the first place. Akane initially refuses to tell him, prompting Saito to argue that since she knows his reasons, it's only fair that she share hers. Turning slightly with a thoughtful, gentle expression, Akane explains that the marriage is simply a necessary evil and purely transactional for her, but she fully intends to uphold her end of the deal despite seeing no personal upside. Saito agrees, noting that their shared goal is simply to keep their meddling families out of their lives. Akane resolves that she is prepared to do whatever it takes to achieve her dreams. Looking on thoughtfully, Saito realizes that just like him, she is only enduring this arrangement for the sake of her own ambitions. Saito then presses further, asking what she would do if their grandparents suddenly demand that they have a baby. Whipping around with swirling eyes and a blazing blush, Akane completely short-circuits in sheer panic at the thought. As Akane tosses and turns in bed, her rear accidentally bumps right against Saito's hand under the blanket, catching him completely by surprise. Furious and mortified, Akane viciously twists Sato's finger while screaming that she'll break it for touching her, leaving his pained cries echoing through the house into the night. At school the following day, Saito nurses his injured fingers in pain, while reassuring a grumpy Akane that he won't tell anyone about their secret. Akane points a stern finger at him, strictly ordering him not to even utter the word marriage while on school grounds. When Saito deadpans that she is the one currently blurting it out, a mortified Akane scrambles to clarify that the rule starts effective immediately. Saito and Akane slide open separate doors and enter their classroom from opposite sides to keep up appearances and avoid suspicion. As Saito sits down at his desk, a girl with long hair and a headband quietly leans over to look at him, catching his attention. Before Saito can finish greeting Shizai, she suddenly leans in close and grabs him by the collar of his uniform. Leaning right against Sato's chest to sniff his neck, Shizai notes that his shampoo smells different and asks where he slept last night, leaving him sweating in shock. Saito raises his hands in a frantic panic with his heart pounding, blurting out an excuse that his dad is just trying a new brand. Whispering softly into his ear with a sharp, suspicious gaze, Shizai calls him a liar and claims she can distinctly smell another woman on him. Staring intensely into Sato's petrified, sweating face while gripping his uniform jacket, Shizai leans in close and drops a devastating whisper. "Anika, you got married, didn't you?" Leaning over his desk in the middle of the classroom, Shizai presses the question of his secret marriage, leaving a stunned Saito wondering in horror how she could have figured it out. Shizai reveals that she tracked down his new home after noticing him and their grandfather acting suspicious, but as she starts naming Sakuramori as his bride, a panicked Saito swiftly clamps his hand over her mouth to silence her. Pressing his hands together in a desperate plea, Saito begs Shizai to keep the marriage an absolute secret. Shizai nonchalantly questions why it needs to stay hidden, since it's a happy occasion the class should celebrate, prompting a panicked Saito to rush to stop her. Turning away, Shizai points out that she has no obligation to keep quiet, especially since Saito never even told her he was getting married. After Saito nervously asks what she wants, Shizai demands hush money and paces outside in deep chibi thought, mulling over the Ojou family fortune. Distracted by a passing butterfly, a chibi Shizai mindlessly chases after it, while Saito deadpants that she can't even think of what she wants. Glancing back with a glint in her eye, Shizai confidently tells him that the right demand will come to her eventually. Slowly clenching her hand into a fist, Shizai smirks and declares that she now holds his entire life in the palm of her hand, leaving a sweating Saito dreading the trouble to come. During gym class volleyball, Akane aggressively declares that the game is on and she won't lose to Saito, only for him to bluntly point out that they are on the same team. As Saito and Akane childishly bicker over who owns the volleyball, a cheerful classmate politely interjects to remind them that the ball belongs to the school, leaving Saito defeatedly conceding the point. A female classmate playfully teases Saito, pointing out that while he's normally the most laid-back person in class, his brain seems to completely shut off whenever he talks to Akane, leaving him taken aback. Frustrated, Saito tells Akane they can just take turns and demands that she stay out of his way for the next play, leaving her gritting her teeth in annoyance. Determined to make his called shot, Saito focuses intensely, sharpens his senses to track the trajectory of the flying volleyball, and locks in to strike. Saito and Akane dive for the volleyball at the exact same moment, violently colliding midair and knocking each other flat onto the court. Lying battered on the floor, Saito realizes it was obvious Akane would never agree to take turns, recalling the classmate's earlier words about how his brain turns off around her. Pushing himself up from the gym floor exhausted, Saito admits to himself that it is utterly impossible not to get worked up when dealing with Akane. Leaning in close as Akane pants on the gym floor, Saito reaches out his fingers toward her face after noticing the loud impact. Hovering directly over Akane, Saito gently lifts her chin to check if her jaw is hurt from the collision, catching her completely off guard. Akane's face turns completely crimson in total panic, while their classmates squeal and blush in the background, thinking Saito is moving in for a kiss. A furiously blushing Akane shouts that he can't pull a move like that in public, even if he's her husband, prompting a terrified Saito to instantly clamp his hands over her mouth before she exposes their secret. Gasping for breath while nervously tugging at her gym shirt, an intensely flushed Akane calls him a pervert for trying something during class, while a flabbergasted Saito screams that he wasn't trying to do anything. Akane bursts into theatrical, tearful wails claiming she won't be innocent on her wedding day, while Saito deadpants that they are literally already married. Nearby classmates giggle warmly at their constant back and forth, pointing out how the two never seem to get sick of each other. Overhearing the whispers, a confused Saito turns to ask what on earth the other students are talking about. With a knowing grin, the Jairu classmate explains that their petty lover spats are practically famous, teasingly calling them the school's very own Real Housewives couple. Hearing the couple comparison, Akane stands trembling and head down with an embarrassed blush spreading across her face, while Saito looks on in sheer panic. Completely overwhelmed with mortification, Akane screams at the top of her lungs that they are absolutely not a couple, while Saito inwardly notes that, in truth, they technically are. Relaxing on the living room sofa, Saito flips through a book and reflects on how their home life could possibly work out when they are constantly at each other's throats at school. His quiet evening is abruptly interrupted by a piercing scream from the kitchen. Turning around, Saito asks if they already have bugs, only to find a terrified, trembling Akane. Opening the kitchen cupboards, Akane is horrified to discover the entire pantry aggressively crammed with nothing but instant cup ramen, vegetable soups, and cartons of health juice. Saito proudly gloats that instant ramen and veggie juice form the ultimate diet of cheap, quick, and nutritious essentials, while a stressed Akane clutches her head and asks where he expects to get any protein. With wide, enthusiastic eyes, Saito proudly presents a giant tub and shaker of protein powder, declaring it to be man's ultimate best friend. Saito flaunts the package to show off the Supreme Whey and casein blend, excitedly asking Akane if she has yet to discover the joy of protein supplements. Holding her forehead in disbelief, Akane asks if he seriously plans to live on juice, ramen, and powder, screaming that he is just making sludge as Saito pours a foul concoction into a glass. With sunken, crazed eyes, Saito mixes vegetable juice into the horrifying sludge, while defending how long it took to acquire the taste, leaving Akane trembling in absolute terror at the thought of his impending demise. Muttering to herself with a hand to her chin, Akane realizes she has to step in, worrying that if he dies from his terrible diet, her financial payment for the marriage will be off the table. With an intense, determined blush, Akane resolves to take action purely for her own future and deal, stubbornly insisting to herself that it is definitely not out of concern for him. Striking a dramatic pose and pointing her finger at Saito, Akane scolds him for treating food like a science experiment and boldly declares she will show him what real cooking looks like. Looking on skeptically, Saito insists he's fine with his homemade elixir, but after Akane screeches at him in horror to get rid of the foul gunk, he apologizes and pours the smoking sludge down the sink. Akane slips on an intricately patterned lace apron dotted with hearts and sweet frills. Happily humming while holding up her ladle, Akane boasts of her culinary talent, though she quickly gets flustered and denies it when Saito points out how enthusiastic she seems. Observing her unusually bright mood, Saito wonders why she is in such high spirits and if she actually enjoys cooking. Growing paranoid of her suspiciously cheerful demeanor, Saito imagines Akane as a cackling witch serving a poisoned apple, wondering if she's plotting his demise. Sitting at the table, a panicked Saito tracks her every move, anxiously wondering if she's hiding poison in the bean sprouts, planting a bomb in the tofu, or lacing the broth. Noticing his intense gaze from across the counter, Akane smirks knowingly and chuckles to herself. Puffing up with pride and brandishing her ladle, Akane gloats smugly about catching him watching her with the pathetic, hungry look of a starving dog. Humming a cheerful tune, Akane expertly whisks the eggs, pours the mixture into a sizzling rectangular pan, and carefully rolls up a perfect tamagoyaki. Beaming with pure joy as floating cookware fills her imagination, Akane admires the pan and silently thanks her grandma for the wonderful gift that cooks like a dream. Akane beams with pride at how well her cooking turned out, remembering how difficult it was back in grade school when she struggled with a ruined, burnt old frying pan her parents wouldn't replace. Carrying the food tray with a triumphant smirk, Akane gleefully imagines how one bite will completely blow Sato's mind and force him to shower her with endless praise. With eyes sparkling at the prospect of finally scoring a victory over Saito, Akane approaches cackling maniacally, while a terrified Saito braces himself for what he's convinced is his poisoned final meal. Akane sets down a beautifully prepared, steaming home-cooked meal consisting of rolled tamagoyaki, a fresh pork and vegetable salad, a bowl of white rice, and miso soup. With his heart pounding in fear, Saito suspiciously inspects a bite with his chopsticks to make sure there are no nails or explosive devices hidden inside, while an annoyed Akane snaps that those aren't even edible. Bracing himself for death and mentally picturing a crime scene where he leaves behind a dying message reading "My wife did it," Saito takes a cautious bite of the food. Resting her chin in her hands with a radiant, eager smile, Akane asks Saito if the meal is good. Caught off guard and blushing slightly, Saito genuinely admits that the food is great. Savoring the juicy, lightly boiled pork, the spiced radish and onion kick, and the sweet and sour tomatoes, Saito happily slurps down his soup in quiet contentment. As Saito slurps his soup in the quiet room, he recalls his grandfather hosting extravagant, boisterous feasts filled with prime Kobe beef and gourmet abalone. In stark contrast, he remembers standing alone as a hungry child with a growling stomach while his parents walked out the door, telling him dinner was just instant cup noodles in the pantry. Alone at the table with only the distant echoes of partying in the background, a young Saito quietly ate his plain cup ramen, quietly whispering to himself that it was delicious. Holding his bowl, Saito reflects somberly on how his grandfather's favoritism alienated him from his parents, leaving him with only instant ramen and TV dinners at home. With eyes shimmering with quiet emotion, Saito realizes that a simple, home-cooked meal prepared specially for him is nothing short of a miracle. Sitting across from each other at the dining table in the warm glow of the evening, Akane rests her chin on her hands while watching Saito quietly enjoy the meal, as he gently reflects that it is wonderfully ordinary. Misinterpreting Sato's quiet compliment, an offended and blushing Akane instantly snatches the plate away and fumes that he shouldn't eat it if it's merely ordinary. In total shock, Saito reaches out in disbelief and demands to know why she is suddenly cutting him off mid-meal. Storming off furiously with the dish, Akane shouts that if he doesn't like it, she'll just give the food to the strays outside. Saito sprints after her in a frantic chase, yelling that he never said he didn't like it, while a stubborn Akane tears up and counters that he never said he did. Confused as to why she is fuming, Saito swiftly takes back the food tray and begins violently stuffing his cheeks full of dinner, while an enraged Akane screams at him for wolfing it down. With cheeks bulging, Saito furiously chomps away and declares he will finish every single grain of rice, while Akane desperately tries to stop him and accuses him of committing a domestic dine and dash. With his mouth completely packed and eyes gleaming with stubborn triumph, Saito smugly tells Akane to give it up, declaring she sealed her fate the moment she walked into that kitchen. With empty bowls before him, Saito serenely clasps his hands in gratitude after cleaning his entire plate, while a tearful, red-faced Akane seethes in frustration and curses his house. Outside the warmly lit home, their lively bickering echoes into the quiet night, capping off another chaotic yet heartwarming evening together. As Akane furiously pummels his back demanding her food back, a calm Saito keeps his hands clasped in prayer and inwardly reflects that getting attacked for eating a meal made just for him is yet another first. As a hand gently pats his cheek and a voice whispers for him to wake up, a half-asleep Saito feels someone trying to rouse him. drowsily thinking back. Saito recalls how his younger cousin Shizuai used to wake him up just like this, having loved cuddling with him since they were kids. Still half asleep and assuming it's Shizuai, Saito grabs the wrist and tugs them into bed to sleep a little longer, eliciting a startled shriek. The sweet scent of a girl's hair wafts over Saito, making his heart race with a blush as he realizes the feeling is far from unwelcome and stirs something instinctive within him. Saito peacefully embraces Akane in bed with a contented smile, while Akane turns beet red, completely paralyzed in panic and sweating profusely from the sudden intimate hug. A furious, mortified scream echoes out of the house into the neighborhood as Akane shrieks at Saito to get his hands off her. Sporting a bandage on his bruised head, a dazed Saito laments that marrying his classmate has been one endless ordeal, while a deeply embarrassed, red-faced Akane crosses her arms and fumes. When Saito comments that he never expected a wake-up call from her, an outraged Chibi Akane stomps her foot and snaps that she didn't come to wake him up, she came to pick a fight. Marching into the kitchen, Akane points furiously at the mountain of filthy plates left in the sink, screaming at Saito that she cooked last night and demanding to know if he thinks she's his personal maid. Blushing intensely with embarrassment, Akane shouts in fury, pointing out the toilet seat left wide open and demanding to know why he never puts it down. When Saito casually asks what's wrong with leaving it up, Akane insists it's disgusting, while Saito mentally argues that washing up all at once is just efficient min-maxing and that neither his family nor Shizuai ever cared about the toilet seat. Flailing her arms in exasperation, Akane furiously lists more bathroom offenses, yelling that he left empty toilet paper rolls and soap wrappers on the floor, and asking if he is trying to turn their new home into a jungle. With absolute conviction and a sharp gaze, Saito firmly declares that having one cleanup day a month is more than enough. Akane turns ghostly pale and clutches herself in utter horror, trembling as she genuinely questions if he is even human. Saito casually tells her not to be cruel to the garbage and claims they live in harmony, while a furious Akane screams that she wants a clean, orderly home. With a deadpan expression, Saito admits he doesn't even see the point of bathing or cleaning, sending a horrified Akane into a full-body shudder, as she calls him completely insane. Dramatically clutching her head in despair, Akane groans that her intolerable roommate is giving her a chronic migraine, viewing the unbothered Saito as a literal alien. Sighing in exasperation, Saito watches her complain and silently begs her to cut the dramatics. Reflecting on their clash of habits, Saito realizes that keeping two mortal enemies trapped together around the clock is a recipe for disaster, and the real sticking point extends far beyond simple housework. With eyes sparkling with sheer excitement and controller in hand, Saito passionately declares that nothing relieves stress quite like video games. As bizarre, grotesque zombie shrieks and food-slaying chaos blast from the TV, an infuriated Akane slams her door open, yelling at him to keep it down while she studies and asking what kind of weird game he's playing. Saito passionately defends the game as a high-concept tourism zombie hunter, where players slay historical zombies using regional Japanese delicacies, while a thoroughly disgusted Akane covers her face and demands he shut it off. Saito smugly argues that he already turned down the gore to 40% so the organs wouldn't block his view, prompting an irritated Akane to stomp over and threaten to pull the plug herself. In a total panic, Saito screams at her to at least let him save before she ruins 2 hours of progress. But when Akane looks completely bewildered by the term save file, a dismayed Saito asks if she has ever even played a video game. Puffing out her chest with proud satisfaction, Akane smugly brags that she loves crane games and once even won a massive plushie. Mentally branding Akane a total casual, Saito screams in sheer horror as she brazenly grabs the power cord and starts pulling the plug right out of the socket. Just before disaster strikes, the doorbell chimes with a delivery arrival, freezing both of them in place. Under the night sky, Akane steps away to answer the door while demanding he shut the game off, leaving a relieved Saito to breathe a thankful sigh. Undressing in the bathroom, Saito somberly realizes that the delivery contained the last of his belongings from his parents, feeling as though they are actively trying to erase every trace of him. Letting out a heavy sigh, Saito quietly reflects that he will likely never return to the home he grew up in, though he dryly muses that anywhere would be better than his current marital war zone. Noticing the bathroom light shining brightly from behind the closed sliding door, an irritated Saito realizes Akane left it on. Fuming with annoyance, Saito slides the door open and angrily grumbles that she constantly hounds him about utility bills whenever he forgets, yet turns around and does the exact same thing herself. Catching sight of Akane resting peacefully in the bath, Saito is completely captivated and struck by her breathtaking beauty. Though he acknowledges acknowledges that she is undeniably a beautiful woman regardless of their endless arguing. Sato's awe turns to pure terror when he realizes he has been staring in a daze instead of immediately turning around. Panting in terror, Saito realizes that given how much Akane already has it out for him, death might be the least of his problems, desperately hoping she hasn't opened her eyes as he resolves to beat a hasty retreat from the dragon's den. Standing naked in the steamy bathroom with dread rising from his gut and the weight of his sins crashing down, Saito panics with a pounding heart over walking in on a girl in the bath, certain she will murder him on the spot. Treating his escape like a top-secret stealth mission with a pounding heart, Saito tiptoes frantically backward toward the exit, knowing full well it's silence or death. Just as he tries to step away, his wet foot lets out a sharp squeak against the floor, leaving Saito gasping in sheer panic while Akane remains peacefully still in the bath. Scrambling back into the dressing area, Saito sneaks through and shuts the sliding door with a solid clunk, narrowly escaping without being caught. Panting and wheezing heavily against the door frame, a completely flushed Saito lets out a massive breath of exhaustion after barely escaping the bathroom alive. Clutching his towel and cheerfully celebrating that he survived, Saito suddenly stops dead in his tracks and freezes mid-celebration. Looking back with a serious and puzzled expression, Saito realizes something is strange, eyes closed or not. Akane definitely should have noticed his loud presence in the room. A sudden shudder runs down Sato's spine as the horrific thought strikes him that Akane might have passed out from the heat in the bath. Looking back toward the bathroom door, Saito recalls that she did look unusually pale and limp with exhaustion. Gritting his teeth in fierce determination, Saito curses under his breath and resolves that sworn enemies or not, he can't just stand by and leave her to die. Haunted by scary statistics about thousands of bathtub drownings from heat shock, Saito panics that she is in genuine danger despite feeling silly for worrying. Rushing back into the bathroom, Saito frantically pats Akane's face and begs her to wake up. To his utter exasperation, a blissfully dreaming Akane merely mutters sleepily about him groveling to stay in the doghouse, prompting Saito to decide she is entirely on her own. Blushing slightly as she reflects more calmly on the incident, Akane starts to reconsider and realizes that Saito probably wasn't trying to assault her after all. Remembering how completely exhausted she had been from juggling housework and studying, Akane wonders if Saito only came in because he was genuinely worried when she dozed off in the tub. Drying her hair in front of the mirror, Akane pauses in quiet contemplation, wondering what it means if he really was just trying to look out for her. Akane blushes with conflicted guilt, realizing that if he was truly worried about her, flying off the handle at him would make her an awful person. Opening the bedroom door where Saito is lying down reading, Akane hesitantly approaches the bed to speak with him. Her head spinning into complete overdrive, Akane blushes furiously as she frantically debates with herself whether she should apologize or thank him. When Saito bluntly tells her he is tired, a deeply flustered Akane snaps in embarrassment, pulling the blanket up over herself and yelling that it wasn't important anyway before telling him to just go to sleep. Lying side by side in bed with their backs turned to each other, a palpable distance and lingering tension hang in the air between them. Clutching her blanket tightly and biting her lip in quiet frustration, Akane bitterly thinks to herself how infuriatingly blunt he is. Tears welling up in her eyes as she clutches the blanket close to her face, Akane feels a deep ache of frustration at how infuriated she is that the words just won't come out. Sitting at her classroom desk resting her cheek in her hand, Akane lets out a deep, weary sigh, unable to focus on lessons and noting in a daze that she has lost 5 kilos purely from domestic stress. Clutching her face in despair at her desk, Akane feels pushed to the absolute limit in body and soul, torn between the marriage she agreed to for her dream and her growing misery, before her friends suddenly interrupt to ask why she has such a long face. Overwhelmed by her emotions, Akane bursts into tears and buries her face into her friend Himari, who panics and asks if she encountered a creep on the train. When Akane tearfully whimpers that her situation is worse and the police can't help, Himari gently pats her head and offers a listening ear for whatever is troubling her. Blushing timidly with a shy, earnest look, Akane asks her friends how one goes about making peace and becoming friends with someone who seemingly hates their guts. Himari immediately puts 2 and 2 together and asks if she means Saito, sending a completely flustered Akane into a panic as she shrieks in denial. When Himari casually mentions that she always got the vibe Akane was crushing on Saito since their first year, Akane vehemently yells that she never was and never will be. Clutching her head in distress, Akane cries that she is going crazy from the non-stop fighting and has no idea what to do, leaving Himari pondering the difficult dilemma. cheerfully suggesting that she would just give them a big hug. Himari suddenly pulls a flustered Akane into a tight embrace. When Akane protests that physical affection won't work and slumps while envying Himari's superpower to get along with anyone, Himari gently suggests talking things out instead. Smiling warmly with reassurance, Himari tells Akane she doesn't have superpowers and reminds her that a good relationship isn't about forcing someone to respect you. Smiling cheerfully, Himari advises Akane that building a genuine relationship starts with respecting them first. Left pondering her words, Akane mutters to herself in quiet realization that it all begins with respect. When Akane nervously doubts her ability to do that and asks what she should do if she ends up breaking their neck halfway through the conversation, Himari hastily clarifies that she meant talking things out rather than duking it out. Sitting together on a courtyard bench during lunch, Saito scrolls on his phone, while his companion happily munches on melon bread beside him. Chewing with stuffed cheeks, she asks if a carton of coffee milk is really all he's having and offers to share, but a sluggish Saito declines, mentioning he isn't hungry. Giving him a cheerful thumbs up, she sparklingly urges him to just leave Akane, declaring that she wouldn't care if he's a divorce and promises to look after him, leaving Saito offering an awkward, weary thanks. Staring ahead resolutely, Saito states that he cannot give up on the marriage because he needs to inherit the Ojou group, leaving his companion gazing at him in thoughtful silence. Explaining that she doesn't want to see him suffer, she tells him that if divorce is off the table, he needs to get along with Akane, though Saito instantly rejects the idea by claiming they are completely incompatible. Sitting together under the tree, she calls him out on his stubborn mindset, pointing out that while some people might naturally clash, he isn't even trying. Leaning in close while picking a leaf from her hair, she explains that people raised in different environments naturally have conflicting habits and perspectives, bluntly asking Saito if he has made any real effort to accommodate Akane. As Saito stammers in surprise at how deeply she has thought about relationships, she gently points out that only exact clones share flawless compatibility and that differences make life interesting, before blushing softly and confessing that despite being nothing like him, she still loves him. Looking at him with earnest eyes, she insists that if he truly wants things to work out, he must compromise and change himself. Staring back intently, Saito listens as she points out that understanding the feelings of others is an essential leadership skill if he intends to become company president. Reaching an absurdly self-serving conclusion, she smugly declares that from all of this, Saito should carry her like a little princess, leaving him sweating and utterly bewildered by her logic. Arriving back at the house while pondering the idea of compromising, Saito opens the door and announces his return, only to be met by Akane trembling and intensely glaring with an intimidating aura. Seeing her brooding hostility, Saito immediately swerves to bypass her and mutters an apology to Shizuai for wasting her advice, but before he can walk away, Akane grabs him tightly by the coat to stop him. Her face glowing bright red with nervous resolve, Akane earnestly stammers that they really need to have a talk. Crossed arms trembling with hesitation, Akane explains that she wants to discuss how they can make their situation work and learn to get along better. Her eyes swirling with intense embarrassment, Akane frantically insists that it's not because she wants to be friends, but warns that everything will fall apart if they don't change, desperately pleading for them to talk things out like adults. Sitting opposite each other at the kitchen table, Akane holds her head in exhaustion and suggests making things easier on themselves, which Saito fully agrees with after finding their daily routine to be an absolute living hell. When Akane admits she doesn't even know where to begin, Saito raises a finger and proposes that they each establish some clear ground rules to minimize their stress levels. As Saito explains that laws allow different people to coexist peacefully by setting clear dividing lines, Akane cheekily nods and remarks that he isn't a complete ignoramus after all, prompting an annoyed Saito to ask if she could sound a little less surprised. Taking the initiative with a determined glare, Akane declares that first things first, she has shouldered all the cleaning duties ever since they moved in together. When Saito argues that letting dishes pile up to wash all at once is more efficient, Akane erupts in fury, slamming the table and insisting that daily dishwashing is necessary to avoid bugs and illness-causing bacteria. Recognizing that she won't back down and remembering the importance of compromise, Saito agrees to clean up after meals, leaving Akane pleasantly surprised before she fidgets shyly and asks if he has any demands of his own. With his heart pounding, Saito nervously brings a hand to his chin and asks if she could let it slide whenever he accidentally brushes against her in bed. Blushing furiously while clutching her chest, Akane calls him a creep for asking to excuse sexual harassment, furiously demanding that he make himself 50 centimeters shorter since their bed is tiny. Clasping his hands together in desperate pleading, Saito cries that he only has 20 digits and will run out of fingers if she breaks one every time he rolls over, finally getting a flustered Akane to reluctantly concede. Blushing intensely and trembling with embarrassment, Akane clutches her sweater tightly and concedes that she will let him touch her. Akane quickly clarifies that he may only touch her over her clothes and nothing underneath, prompting an exasperated Saito to shout that he had no intention of doing so anyway, before the two settle into calmly negotiating rules about chores and quiet hours for horror games. Looking at her empty teacup, Akane figures they have covered everything, prompting Saito to ask if there is anything else they need to discuss. Placing a hand on his chin in thoughtful reflection, Saito brings up something he read about mindful gratitude being the key to a good relationship. As Saito explains that they should make an effort to thank each other even for small things, a deeply flustered Akane clutches her chest and wonders what to say next. Clasping her hands together bashfully with a deep blush spreading across her cheeks, Akane timidly asks Saito to tell her the food is good whenever she cooks for him. When Saito deadpans that doing so feels deceptive if the food actually isn't good, Akane insists that he do it anyway, pouting as she explains how much effort goes into cooking and how disheartening it is to simply be told her meals are ordinary. When Saito tries to argue that calling her food ordinary was intended as a compliment, Akane baffledly asks how that could possibly be a compliment, before shouting in outrage when he cheekily asks if she has a full week to hear his explanation. Sitting at the table hashing out every specific pain point of cohabitation, dividing their chores, and establishing clear boundaries, the two finally begin to build mutual understanding. Reflecting on how they had only ever bickered and faced opposite directions in the past, they finally sit face to face to tackle their problems directly. That night, with ground rules established and mutual tension eased, they lie back to back and sleep peacefully without fighting for the very first time. The next day, Saito arrives with a small pastry box held tightly in his hands, bracing himself with a determined look. His heart thumping anxiously, Saito second-guesses himself, wondering if bringing a small present is too obvious an attempt to score points or if she will just think he is being creepy. Stepping through the door, Saito thrusts the cake box forward to Akane in her apron, awkwardly mentioning that he bought something for her since she likes shortcake. Caught completely off guard, Akane points to herself in wide-eyed disbelief, stunned that he actually bought a present for her. When Akane asks how he knew she loves shortcake, Saito explains that she mentioned it in a first-year assignment, which makes her call it freaky and sends Saito into a flustered panic. Sweating nervously, Saito kicks himself, thinking he blew it and admitting that remembering such specific details might indeed come off as weird. Fearing that this awkward moment might ruin their fragile peace, Saito watches apprehensively as a blushing, flustered Akane clutches the pastry box and timidly tries to speak. Holding the pastry box close with a radiant, teary-eyed smile framed by glowing light, Akane looks at him with genuine warmth and softly whispers her sincere thanks. Completely unprepared for her unexpectedly dazzling smile, Saito's heart violently throbs as he freezes in sheer shock and breathlessness. Seeing the lavish feast Akane prepared for dinner, Saito is genuinely impressed by her effort, and after taking a bite, he sincerely praises the meal as delicious and restaurant quality. Resting her chin gently in her hands, Akane looks at him with a meltingly sweet, radiant expression and softly tells him she's glad to hear it, leaving a flustered Saito completely stunned. As Saito washes dishes at the sink, Akane ties on her apron and offers to help him out despite it being his assigned turn on cleaning duty. Suspicious of her sudden generosity, Saito asks what she is plotting, prompting a flustered Akane to angrily snap that there are simply a lot of dishes to wash. Catching himself, a blushing Saito awkwardly looks away and genuinely offers his thanks and appreciation, leaving Akane staring back at him in quiet surprise. Akane turns to stare at Saito in quiet contemplation, leaving a blushing and nervous Saito sweating under her gaze as he wonders what she is thinking. Beaming with a radiant, joyful smile that sparkles around her, Akane places her hands on her hips and cheerfully replies that he is very welcome. When Saito remarks that she really knows her way around a kitchen, Akane explains that she handled housework because her parents were always busy with work, proudly adding that she could cook curry by first grade. As they casually banter back and forth, Akane shyly downplays the curry as easy enough for a chimpanzee, before nervously fidgeting as she approaches Saito on the sofa to get his attention. Hiding behind a movie disc she rented from the video store with a crimson blush, Akane timidly shows it to him, leaving Saito wondering if she is trying to spend quality time together. While Akane beams with starry-eyed delight watching the cat video, an exhausted Saito struggles to keep his taped open eyes from shutting, forcing himself to stay awake since she made the effort to be nice. Though Akane initially crosses her arms and dismisses gaming when Saito invites her to try playing with him, she quickly gets fiercely competitive, furiously mashing the controller and screaming at him to fight fair as Saito smugly dominates the match. Sharing genuine smiles and laughter, Saito reflects with a mix of surprise and slight unease upon realizing that he and his sworn enemy can actually enjoy each other's company. When Akane happily offers to wash the dessert plates so he can take a bath first, her sudden suspicion flares up as she shrieks asking if he plans to spy on her, prompting an exasperated Saito to call her paranoid. Akane defensively brings up the time he barged in on her in the bath, prompting Saito to shout back that it was a genuine emergency. Realizing that he truly rushed in only to save her, Akane slumps with a bashful look as she starts to address what happened. Remembering the entire incident with a deep blush, Akane softly whispers her thanks for saving her, but before Saito can ask what she said, she flusteredly shouts for him to forget it and dashes out of the room. Late that night, Saito wakes up in bed and notices Akane shivering with her blanket kicked off, quietly sitting up to gently pull the covers over her. Surprised when Akane softly thanks him from under the duvet, Saito realizes she has been awake the entire time and lies back down blushing, wondering why he is acting so out of character by treating her so gently. Lying in bed, Saito awkwardly smiles and suggests that next time he pick a movie while she picks a game, but she interrupts by softly noting that she has a name. Pouting slightly, Akane explains that always being addressed as you feels disrespectful and asks him to use her name, clarifying with a slight blush that she means her first name when he guesses Sakramori. With his breath catching and a faint blush rising to his cheeks, Saito stares back wide-eyed and softly utters her name, Akane. Resting her head softly against her pillow with a sweet, blushing smile and tender gaze, Akane gently responds by calling him Saito in return. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, a heavily blushing Saito turns away and mutters that it's nothing, to which Akane quietly concedes with a soft blush of her own. Lying back-to-back under the covers with both of their hearts pounding loudly, Saito feels the burning heat of her back against his as they try to fall asleep. At school, Himari cheerfully asks Akane if she made any progress with her enemy, to which Akane gratefully admits they finally talked things out. After praising Akane for managing her temper and not flipping the kitchen table, Himari gets called away by a classmate looking for her. As Himari leaves, an eraser accidentally drops and bounces across the classroom floor toward Akane, who turns to find Saito fast asleep at his desk after his exhausted night. Akane hands Saito his dropped eraser, and after he sleepily blinks awake and thanks her with a yawn, she stares at him in silence. Feeling a sudden twinge in her chest whenever Saito thanks her lately, Akane is startled by an inner angel persona cheering her on to work harder, so he will like her more. Blushing intensely and nervously clutching her tie, Akane is thrown into confusion as she realizes her feelings are changing toward the person she thought she hated. Resting her flushed cheeks in her hands as her heart twinges again, Akane gazes downward in vulnerable bewilderment, wondering what this strange new feeling could be. After wrapping up her conversation with a classmate at the doorway, Himari turns back toward Akane and directly asks if she is sure she doesn't have a crush on Saito. Blushing with a tender, hopeful smile surrounded by sparkling light, Himari softly wonders to herself if she might still have a chance with Saito. Still blushing profusely as she holds her cheeks, Akane's gaze wanders over to Saito, who looks back with mild curiosity as Shizui clings playfully to his back. Wiping his face with a handkerchief after Shizui splashes water on him in the library, Saito sarcastically thanks her while she proudly claims she was just treating his dry eyes. As Saito stands up, Shizui sits on the floor and reaches out for the book he dropped, asking what he was reading. Picking up the book to inspect the cover, Shizui discovers the title reads, Communication for Doofs, revealing the source of Saito's recent relationship advice. As Shizui teases him for finally acknowledging his lack of charm, Saito clutches the self-help book and bashfully admits he thought it could help smooth things over between him and Akane. When Shizui asks if the book is actually useful, Saito reads a line about how communal activities build solidarity, leading him to ponder what that means for them in practice. Taking the book's advice to heart, Saito resolves that they need to do more activities together as students head off to the science lab. When Saito stops Akane in the school hallway to ask for a moment, she gets prickly and defensive, hissing that she warned him never to talk to her at school. After asking if she is free since Himari is busy working, Saito invites her to go shopping together on the way home, leaving Akane completely blank and baffled. Akane turns bright red and begins stammering in shock, wondering out loud if he is actually asking her out on a date. Panicking that someone might overhear, Saito immediately muffles her mouth, shushes her, and drags her into an empty classroom before slamming the door shut as they both catch their breath. Akane angrily brands him a pervert for pulling a girl into a dark classroom, to which a flustered Saito retorts that she was the one loudly blabbing about going on a date. Fidgeting nervously and clutching her cardigan with a deep blush, Akane shyly looks down and asks if a guy and girl meeting up after school isn't basically a date. Caught completely off guard by her timid question in the quiet classroom, a stunned Saito turns back toward her in utter disbelief. Blushing furiously with sweat beading down his face, a completely flustered Saito stammers as he struggles to get any words out. Pumping his fist with an overly intense expression, Saito frantically denies the idea of a date, sweating profusely as he insists it's merely a mundane shopping run. Saito quickly rationalizes that the fridge is running low and carrying heavy groceries alone is exhausting, leading an equally flustered Akane to awkwardly agree that he would never actually ask her out. Dripping with nervous sweat, both of them shout over each other to stop getting weird ideas, each desperately trying to hide their mutual embarrassment. Thoroughly overwhelmed and completely flushed, the two break into strained, hysterical laughter together in the middle of the empty classroom. Leaning against the classroom wall, Saito asks where they should meet up, to which Akane suggests finding somewhere they won't be spotted. Standing amidst the papers on the floor, Saito reflects on how being seen together outside would invite endless gossip despite there being nothing between them, putting aside the secret fact of their marriage. Akane proposes meeting at the back gate since nobody uses it aside from teachers driving in and out. Agreeing that it's a solid plan, they finalize their meetup at the back gate after school as the view transitions to the exterior of the school building. As class ends and other students head out, Akane packs up her bag and glances back at Saito, who catches her eye from his desk. With a determined nod, Saito signals for her to head out first, prompting Akane to quietly slip out of the classroom. Walking down the empty hallway, Akane reassures herself that no one will hold her up to chat since Imari is working, and she has no other friends, only to be suddenly startled when someone calls out her name. Akane is utterly horrified as Himari comes sprinting down the hall with gleaming excitement, gleefully shouting that they should walk home together. Giving an enthusiastic thumbs up, Himari explains that her work shift got cancelled and she was dying to hang out, leaving Akane sweating in silent panic. Akane is instantly tempted and drooling when Himari reveals that her favorite parfait place is debuting a limited edition 1 kilo strawberry parfait that very afternoon. Pumping her fist with a bright, cheerful grin, Himari proudly declares that she saved up her own cash specifically so she could treat Akane to the special parfait. Akane finds herself caught in an agonizing dilemma, torn between the rare 1 kilo strawberry parfait with an excited Himari and keeping her prior promise not to flake on Saito. When Akane apologetically confesses that she already has other plans, an excited Himari asks if it's a new friend, leading Akane to reluctantly murmur that Himari already knows the person. Putting the clues together, a curious Himari asks if Akane has a date with Saito, causing Akane's heart to thud wildly as she frantically shrieks that it isn't a date. Flashing a cheerful peace sign, Himari enthusiastically suggests they all hang out together, which instantly makes Akane's chest sting with unease at the thought of a group outing. Either internally and blushing hard, Akane realizes there is genuine meaning in going alone with Saito and intuitively feels that is what he wants, too. Apologizing profusely and promising to hang out another time, Akane dashes away down the hallway, leaving a puzzled Himari staring after her before walking down the stairs. Rushing down the stairs while resolving to bake Himari apology cookies later, Akane accidentally steps right on Shizuai, who is lying in wait on the floor setting a trap. After Akane panics and helps her up, Shizuai immediately questions her about which communal activity she would prefer. When Shizuai presents a list of bizarre activities like world domination or sutra copying, Akane dismisses them and nervously checks the clock, trying to excuse herself, only for Shizuai to fix her with a glinting glare and refuse to let her leave. Stirring up an imposing, dark aura alongside an enormous menacing hamster, Shizuai strikes a battle pose and declares that Akane won't be allowed to leave without giving an answer. Lamenting her terrible luck as sweat runs down her flushed face, Akane realizes she has no time to spare and mutters a quick apology. Shouting that she has something really important to attend to, Akane bolts down the corridor at full speed, leaving a startled Shizui in her dust. Sneaking out the back doors and sprinting outside, a deeply blushing and breathless Akane suddenly realizes what she said, wondering in shock if she really just declared that meeting Saito was important. Reaching the secluded back gate where cherry blossom petals gently drift in the breeze, Akane rests against the fence and exhales a weary sigh of relief as she waits. Catching her breath against the wall, Akane reminds herself that it's definitely not a date and that they are only heading out together to buy necessities. While waiting, she nervously fidgets, straightens her uniform, and pulls out a compact mirror to fix her hair. Blushing intensely as she applies lip balm in her mirror, Akane justifies to herself that just because it isn't a date doesn't mean she can't make an effort to look nice. Walking outside past the other students after grabbing his shoes, Saito wonders if Akane is really waiting for him, or if she decided against doing things together after all. Telling himself that going alone would be much simpler than risking an argument with a girl he supposedly hates, Saito rounds the corner only to be stopped in his tracks upon spotting Akane waiting under the falling blossoms. Staring at Akane as cherry blossom petals drift around her radiant figure, Saito is overcome with emotion, unable to understand why he hoped so deeply that she would be waiting for him. Approaching her awkwardly, Saito asks if they should get going, and as they quietly talk about where to shop, an awkward yet tender silence settles over them beneath the petals. Arriving at the local supermarket Getsamart, Saito remarks on how packed it is despite its unflashy exterior as the two walk inside together. Akane cheerfully defends the market, lecturing him that the produce is clean, fresh, and cheap, prompting Saito to note that she has done her research. As Saito casually tosses a carton of eggs into his basket, Akane panics and scolds him for not checking the price, pointing out another carton that is 20 yen cheaper with a later expiration date. Holding up the cartons of eggs with a passionate blush, Akane lectures Saito on why eggs are a household staple and questions why on earth he would ever pick the expensive ones. Noticing the disarray on the shelf, Akane tidies up the messy egg cartons in a flash until they are spick and span, all while shooting down Saito's protest about his selection by pointing out he just grabbed whatever was closest. Struggling to calculate the price per milliliter between two different bottles of soy sauce, Akane intently compares them while Saito tells her she's being ridiculous and should just buy the bigger one. Akane dramatically warns him that loose spending will leave him freezing in the dead of winter saddled with crippling debt, to which Saito exasperatedly shouts that no one goes bankrupt over condiments. After Akane solemnly compares buying pricey soy sauce to Columbus going broke over pepper, Saito notes how steadfastly she sticks to her principles and wonders where she gets all the energy. Approaching the meat section where a crowd of determined local shoppers is already warming up and stretching, Akane and Saito look on in mild confusion. When an employee wheels out a cart for a 50 yen chicken breast time sale, Akane gets fired up with an intense battle aura, brushing off Sato's logic about leftovers by declaring you buy cheap and freeze it, determined to finally conquer the cutthroat sale. As the butcher rings the bell for the sale, an unstoppable horde of berserk housewives charges aggressively toward the cart, leaving Saito completely terrified. After being violently tossed around and beaten in the chaotic dust cloud of shoppers, a bruised and battered Akane collapses onto the floor, smiling proudly as she holds up the discounted chicken she managed to secure. Akane eagerly presents her prize, only for both of them to realize in horror that she grabbed the sale sign itself instead of actual meat. Seeing a tearful, bruised Akane on the brink of crying over her blunder, a panicked Saito promises that he will win the next sale item for her. As another cart wheels out for a 25 yen pork rib time sale, Saito sneaks into the clamoring crowd of housewives, determined that a high school boy in his prime won't lose to them. Saito quickly finds himself in over his head as he is surrounded by terrifying, glowing-eyed housewives warning him away before he gets trampled in the violent frenzy as the bell rings. With the sale cart completely cleared out, Saito and Akane lie defeated, battered, and flat on their backs side by side on the supermarket floor. Lying on the floor with tears of amusement in her eyes, a bruised Akane bursts out laughing, cheerfully admitting that they never stood a chance against the crowd. Beside her on the floor, Saito breaks into a gentle, happy smile, chuckling as he agrees that they must look like complete idiots right now. Sprawled out side by side on the supermarket floor, Saito and Akane share a genuine laugh together over their shared defeat. Dusting themselves off as they decide to call it a day, Akane promises they will win next time, to which an exhausted Saito mutters that he might just stay home next time. Leaning in with a sweet, blushing grin, Akane insists that he has to come with her next time, leaving a flustered Saito to softly agree. Walking home side by side across the bridge as dusk settles over the water, Akane and Saito carry their shopping bags together. Looking down at the glistening river below, Saito gently brings up the topic of their grocery trip. With a relaxed smile, Saito points out how much Akane cares about even the smallest details. Akane immediately puffs her cheeks into a sulky pout and asks if he's calling her petty, prompting Saito to chuckle and quickly clarify he didn't mean it in a bad way. Strolling together along the bridge against the glowing twilight sky, Saito smiles warmly and tells a startled Akane that he reckons she'll make a great wife someday. Akane's eyes widen and her face turns beet red in utter disbelief at Saito's casual compliment. Overcome with embarrassment, she quickly looks away and turns her head, leaving Saito surprised by her sudden reaction. Clutching her hands to her chest with a flustered blush, Akane quietly reminds him that she's already married, which causes Saito to suddenly realize his words and blush deeply himself. Covering his mouth in flustered embarrassment, Saito stammers out an awkward acknowledgement as both of them blush intensely. As they walk silently across the bridge under the darkening evening sky, Saito feels his entire body burn with mortification over putting himself out there, while Akane nervously looks down beside him. Walking home side by side under the vast, sparkling evening sky, their eyes don't meet once, both lost in their own racing thoughts. Late at night, Saito lies in bed yawning sleepily as he prepares to drift off to sleep. Asleep beside him, Akane unexpectedly turns over and tightly clings to his chest, blustering Saito as he frets over how aggressive she is while awake, compared to how affectionate she is when asleep. Akane squeezes him even closer in her sleep, burying her blushing face against his shirt and leaving a wide-awake Saito completely frozen in bed. Trapped under Akane's sleeping form, Saito stays completely still, fearing that making even the slightest move will wake her up like a cat napping on a lap. Admiring how soft and marshmallow-like her cheeks look, Saito slowly extends a finger to gently poke her cheek. Just as his finger makes contact, Akane blinks her eyes wide open, causing Saito to freeze in pure panic. Still in a sleepy daze, Akane acts like a cat and softly sniffs Saito's chest as his heart begins pounding in shock. Seemingly satisfied, Akane peacefully drifts back to sleep nestled against his chest, leaving Saito blushing and wide-eyed. When Saito nervously calls out to her, Akane blinks awake, processing the situation before spiraling into a state of total panic and mortification. Leaping backward across the bed while clutching her pillow tightly to her chest, a bright red Akane frantically accuses Saito of making a move on her, while he desperately yells back that she was the one clinging to him. Akane wildly accuses him of trying to drill a fingernail into her cheek like a slasher villain, demanding to know what he was actually doing when he denies it. Meeting Akane's intense, suspicious glare, Saito groans inwardly, realizing there is no way out of confessing what he was doing. Blushing deeply and looking down in resignation, Saito takes a breath and candidly confesses that he just thought she looked cute while sleeping and got the urge to stroke her cheek, offering an awkward apology. Hearing his shockingly honest compliment, Akane completely short-circuits, clutching her pillow with spiral eyes as a massive blush takes over her entire face. Akane nervously asks if what he said is true while hiding her burning face behind her pillow, and after Saito gives a sheepish apology, she shyly peeks over the pillow to ask just how cute she really was. Scratching his cheek with an intense blush, Saito apologetically admits that she was cute enough to make him completely lose his good sense, leaving Akane's heart pounding wildly as steam practically rises from her beet-red face. Clutching her pillow tightly against her chest, a radiant and deeply blushing Akane looks straight at Saito and shyly grants him permission to look at her a little. Before a stunned Saito can even process what she just said, an overwhelmed Akane abruptly faceplants into her pillow and lies back down in utter embarrassment. Burying her glowing, flushed face into her pillow while squeezing it tightly, Akane repeats herself with breathless embarrassment, murmuring that he can watch her sleep for just a little while. Lying under the blankets, Saito watches Akane sleep peacefully by his side, realizing that, true to her straightforward nature, she genuinely wants him to look at her. As Akane lies with a flushed face and a rapidly racing heartbeat, Saito turns away into his pillow, his own heart pounding so loudly in his ears that he realizes he won't be getting any sleep tonight. When the alarm goes off at 6 in the morning, Saito and Akane sit up in bed, greeting each other with bright, incredibly flustered morning smiles. Sitting awkwardly in bed together, Saito sheepishly questions why they are beaming so happily at each other, trying to convince himself they aren't actually like newlyweds, even though legally speaking, they literally are. While making breakfast, a visibly flustered Akane sheepishly admits she spaced out and completely incinerated a slice of toast into a fiery black crisp. Hearing a sudden panicked scream from the kitchen, Saito splashes water on his face in the bathroom and asks what went wrong. Holding open the rice cooker in tears of despair, Akane wails that she forgot to set the timer, leaving the rice sitting completely raw in water. As smoke billows around the toaster, Saito points out how completely out of it Akane is this morning, only for her to cough and shoot back by asking why he isn't wearing a shirt. Saito scoffs in disbelief at her question, only to look down and realize in shock that he is standing in the middle of the kitchen wearing only his slacks and a necktie. Frantically pulling his shirt back on in a red-faced fluster, Saito suggests they skip breakfast entirely before they accidentally burn the whole house down, which a flustered Akane sheepishly agrees is a good idea. Akane's morning blunder streak reaches a peak when she confesses that she accidentally spread butter all over her shirt while trying to iron it, leaving Saito questioning just how badly flustered she really is. Saito firmly pushes Akane down onto the sofa to keep her from causing any more kitchen chaos, leaving her curled into a sulking ball as she pouts about being bossed around. As Saito frantically wipes down the stove, they suddenly realize what time it is and shout in a frenzy as they rush to head out for school. Walking down the street on their way to school, Akane's attention is caught by an advertisement outside a convenience store for seasonal strawberry cream bread. Noticing her intense stare, Saito asks if she's hungry, but a flustered Akane tries to brush it off, pointing out they're already running late and have no time to buy or eat anything. Insisting that she can't concentrate on an empty stomach, Saito promises to be back in a flash and dashes straight into the store to buy it so they can eat while walking, leaving Akane reaching out after him in surprise. Saito emerges from the convenience store holding a massive strawberry cream bread and a drink, leaving Akane darting her head back and forth in complete disbelief at its actual size compared to the ad. Akane frets that it's far too large to finish on her own, but Saito splits the loaf in half and offers her a piece so they can share it, leaving her quietly touched as they both take a bite. Akane critically rambles about how the pastry lacks real strawberry flavor, but when Saito reaches over and tells her not to eat it if she doesn't like it, she quickly swerves away with a blush. Clutching the bread tightly against her chest with a blushing pout, Akane defiantly declares that it belongs to her and she won't let him take even a single crumb. Akane happily hums while munching on her bread, playfully asking a sampling Saito if it isn't completely underwhelming. Wiping a bit of cream from his lip with a fond, blushing grin, Saito agrees that it's indeed not great. Walking alongside a laughing Akane while sharing cheap pastries on their way to school, Saito quietly thinks to himself that he could easily get used to moments like this. Late at night, Saito steps into the hallway after using the restroom and notices light spilling from the open door of Akane's room. Peeking inside, Saito asks Akane why she's still awake so late, to which she replies that she's studying to stay ahead of their upcoming tests. Watching Akane concentrate intently at her desk, Saito reflects on how stopping their constant bickering has helped him see her in a new light and realize just how dedicated and hardworking she truly is. Saito tells Akane she can slack off on small quizzes since only major exams matter and urges her to sleep since it's 2 a.m., but an annoyed Akane glares back, reminding him that he scored full marks on the last test. Saito casually remarks that he didn't even study and just remembered the class material, wondering aloud how anyone could forget it before turning away to sleep. Fueled by competitive frustration next to a sticky note that reads, "Beat Saito and take first place," a determined Akane grips her pen tightly and resumes studying with fierce intensity. Tears well up in Akane's eyes as she trembles over her notebook, hurt by his careless words and asking if he thinks she's stupid for needing to work so hard. Realizing he struck a painful nerve, a shocked Saito panics and frantically backtracks, trying with an awkward smile to assure her that studying is tough work and he didn't mean it that way. Furious and flustered, Akane pelts Saito with plushies and orders him to get out for distracting her, slamming the door shut right in front of him as he scrambles away. Left standing alone in the hallway, Saito sighs in regret over letting his guard down, lamenting that he still doesn't fully understand all of Akane's triggers. Standing alone outside Akane's shut door, Saito dreads that all the progress they made toward reconciling might completely unravel. Haunted by flashes of their past fights, he worries they will slide right back into their old, hostile dynamic. Desperately trying to think of a way to win her back, Saito suddenly has an epiphany as he recalls a class questionnaire listing strawberry cake as her favorite food. Saito knocks on Akane's door to offer a little midnight snack to help with her studies, prompting a gruff "what do I want?" from an annoyed, cat-like Akane inside. The door creaks open just enough for Akane to peer out suspiciously, questioning what he means by a midnight snack. Bracing himself against her anticipated anger and taking a deep breath, a nervous Saito presents a plate with 2 neatly made strawberry cream fruit sandwiches as his peace offering. Akane's eyes sparkle with pure delight the second she spots the strawberry fruit sandwiches. Quickly putting her guard back up, Akane suspiciously questions why he made them just for her and asks what his game is, to which Saito plainly insists there is no game. Akane refuses to believe him, stubbornly arguing that there has to be a catch for him to act so kind right after they just fought. Completely flustered by her stubbornness, Saito abruptly shoves the plate right toward her, yelling that it's just a normal strawberry sandwich and telling her to just eat it. Saito tells Akane to just toss the food if she doesn't want it before closing the door, leaving her to protest in vain before sitting back down at her desk to stare at the plate in silence. Though Akane tries to resume studying, she can't resist glancing over her shoulder at the treat, gulping with a massive blush as she admits just how delicious it looks. Akane tries to make sense of why Saito would make her a treat right after their fight, humorously wondering if it's laced with sleeping pills, until her growling stomach wins out, convincing her to take just one small bite. Taking a bite of the sandwich, Akane's eyes sparkle with absolute joy as she finds it utterly delicious, happily munching away while noting it definitely has no sleeping pills or protein powder hidden inside. Akane looks down with a blushing face and a racing heart, realizing that Saito made her a normal treat and specifically went out of his way to prepare her favorite food. Imagining Saito in the kitchen thoughtfully looking through ingredients and substituting yogurt just to make something she'd like, Akane wonders with a pounding heart if this is his clumsy way of apologizing. Gently placing a hand over her chest as a soft smile forms on her face, Akane feels the familiar warmth of her fluttering heart returning once again. Glowing with a soft, radiant blush and a tender smile, Akane clutches her chest and reflects on the warm, fluttery twinge in her heart, acknowledging that, even if it puts her on edge, she kind of likes it. Beaming with renewed energy, Akane triumphantly raises her pen in the air, declaring that this snack won't make her go any easier on Saito during the upcoming tests. With the plate licked completely clean, Akane happily hums into the late night, scribbling notes in high spirits as she feels energized enough to study until morning. At school the next day, a cheerful classmate happily hums about lunch while walking beside a visibly exhausted Akane, who teeters on her feet and repeatedly nods off mid-stride. Akane suddenly collapses forward onto the hallway floor from sleep deprivation, prompting her shocked friend to scold her for falling asleep while walking as Akane drowsily blinks awake. In the crowded cafeteria, Akane's friend asks if she's feeling alright since she hasn't looked well, but a tired Akane brushes it off as simple sleep deprivation from studying late for tests. When her friend warns her not to make herself sick by overdoing it, a fiercely driven Akane grinds her teeth and vows to break every bone in her body if that's what it takes to secure first place. Her friend tries to reason with her by saying health matters more than grades, casually adding that she can't beat Saito anyway, which causes Akane to instantly freeze up in tense shock. Akane's classmate instantly regrets her slip of the tongue and recoils in panic as Akane turns around with a dark, ominous aura, muttering in disbelief at the idea that she can't beat Saito. Her friend tries to deflect by pointing out Saito walking by with his lunch tray, but Akane spins around and fiercely points an accusatory finger directly at him. With an intensely fired-up expression and grinding teeth, a passionate Akane raises her fist and loudly vows that, even if it takes thousands of years, she will defeat Saito and prove who is truly superior. Akane aggressively points an electric, confrontational finger at Saito and tells him to prepare himself, leaving a completely bewildered Saito holding his lunch tray and asking what he's supposed to prepare for. Later at a cafe over a plate of strawberry pancakes, Akane's friend expresses admiration for her dedication, admitting she could never study that hard without getting distracted by YouTube. Tucking her hair behind her ear with a shy, rosy blush, Akane softly admits that she genuinely enjoys studying, and that having someone quietly supporting her makes all the difference. Akane's friend excitedly leans over the table grilling her about whether she has a secret boyfriend, sending Akane into a frantic panic as she blurts out excuses while eliminating her parents as possibilities. Donning a detective hat and licking whipped cream off her finger, the friend slyly pieces together the mystery of who could be making late-night snacks if not a boyfriend or her parents. With dramatic flair, the friend flings her cap and shouts that she has figured it out, leaving a terrified Akane clutching her face in pure dread that their secret has been busted. Akane's friend enthusiastically strikes a grand pose and reveals her deduction, declaring that the secret snack maker must be a hired maid. Relieved by the absurd guess, Akane cheerfully plays along and praises the deduction, which leads to her friend playfully glomping her for underestimating her wits. Looking back toward the school building, Akane secretly marvels at Sato's quiet support, vowing to repay his efforts by toppling him from his academic throne. Late that night, Saito is woken up in bed as Akane quietly wriggles out from under the covers. Seeing the digital clock read 3 a.m. while watching Akane slip into her room with light spilling into the hall, Saito worries upon realizing she's staying up late to study yet again. Saito brings Akane another plate of fruit sandwiches, gently advising her to sleep before midnight since running herself ragged will only backfire. Despite his warnings, Akane continues to push through severe exhaustion night after night, alternating between nodding off and frantically writing notes. Wearing a Defeat Saito headband and clutching an energy drink, an intensely determined Akane vows to finish her remaining pages, leaving Saito sighing over her refusal to listen. Saito knocks on Akane's door and brings in another midnight snack, announcing that her food is ready. Entering the room, Saito is met with total silence and finds Akane completely slumped over her desk, fast asleep from exhaustion. Saito softly sighs and urges a sleeping Akane to wake up and get into a proper bed. Akane lies feverish, sweating, and panting heavily against her desk while weakly claiming she is fine, prompting a worried Saito to place his hand on her burning forehead to check her temperature. Feeling how hot she is, Saito sternly tells Akane that she's burning up and immediately orders her to bed. In a dazed haze, Akane weakly agrees as Saito supports her, while she staggers down the hallway, finally collapsing back onto her bed with a high fever. Saito tucks Akane into bed, applies a cooling sheet to her forehead, and takes out the first aid kit as the digital thermometer beeps. Checking the thermometer, Saito is alarmed to see her temperature has spiked to 40.0 degrees Celsius and tells her to hang on. Gently supporting the back of Akane's neck, Saito helps her drink medicine and water from a cup to bring down her severe fever. When a feverish Akane groans about feeling gross and sweaty, Saito quickly grabs a damp cloth and begins gently wiping her arm and hands to cool her down, while wondering if it's really just a cold. Saito blushes with focused concern as he reflects on never having had such a high fever himself, accidentally wiping a sensitive spot that makes Akane flusteredly squeak in protest as he quickly apologizes. Saito looks at Akane with growing worry, trying to reassure himself that she's tough enough to pull through. As rain pours outside in the middle of the night, a high-fevered Akane lies in bed sweating and panting heavily even as the clock ticks past 2 a.m. Sitting at Akane's bedside, Saito watches her ragged breathing grow even heavier and anxiously questions if the medicine is actually working. With his heart pounding in his chest, Saito is struck by the frightening realization that Akane might be seriously ill. Akane tosses restlessly in bed, drenched in sweat and gasping for air as her high fever intensifies. Saito looks back on their rivalry, reflecting on how he once saw Akane as merely a rude, stubborn archenemy who always put him on edge. Wondering why his heart aches with so much worry for her now, Saito is suddenly startled when a choking, feverish Akane deliriously mumbles that she should still be studying. Saito scolds her with frantic concern, telling her that overexerting herself by staying up late to study is exactly what made her this sick. Lying in bed under Sato's watchful care, a feverish Akane softly confesses the true reason behind her extreme drive, revealing that her dream is to become a doctor. Akane explains through her tears that she wants to help people in pain and ensure the people she loves live long, healthy lives because she can't stand feeling useless. Akane admits her parents couldn't afford medical school, but her grandmother offered to pay if they married, leading Saito to softly smile with a blush as he reflects on her dream. Watching over Akane, Saito realizes that while adults might find it childish, both of them share the same resolve to bet their lives and sacrifice everyday freedoms for their dreams. Realizing they are more similar than he thought, Sato's blunt attempt to comfort Akane about natural talent instantly annoys her, prompting her to angrily declare that's exactly what she hates about him. Lying in bed with glistening, feverish eyes and a flushed blush, Akane softly confesses that Sato's effortless brilliance is also what she has always secretly admired. Akane suddenly snaps back to her senses in pure shock as a blushing Saito repeats her words in bewilderment. Overcome with embarrassment, Akane yanks the blanket up over her face with swirling eyes and a blazing blush, frantically screaming at him to forget what she said and insisting she hates his guts. Akane suddenly bursts into a violent coughing fit from her emotional outburst, causing a worried Saito to rush to her side and check if she is alright. Placing his hand back on her, Saito realizes in shock that Akane is burning up even hotter than before as she pants heavily against the pillow. Saito pulls out his phone and firmly announces he is calling an ambulance. Even as a coughing Akane weakly tells him not to be so dramatic. When Akane protests that ambulances are only for real emergencies, Saito counters that an aspiring doctor should know a fever this dangerous could be far worse than a simple cold. Akane refuses the ambulance, tearfully confessing that if someone in dire need died because she took it, she could never forgive herself. Saito is exasperated by her stubborn selflessness as he watches her suffer through agonizing heat and ragged breathing. Overwhelmed with emotion, Saito stares at Akane in disbelief and awe that even while burning up in agony, she is still putting others before herself. Saito decides to call a taxi instead, but he grows increasingly frustrated as every dispatch line is either busy or unresponsive in the middle of the night. With the nearest emergency room 10 minutes away by bus and public transit completely shut down for the night, Saito is left stranded without an easy way to get her help. Seeing him struggle, a delirious Akane weakly tells Saito to just go to sleep since he has school tomorrow, causing him to grit his teeth in resolute frustration. Refusing to leave her suffering, Saito scoops Akane up into his arms in a bridal carry, firmly declaring that going to sleep and doing nothing is not an option. When Akane asks what he's doing, Saito firmly declares that he can't just leave his wife while she's in this much pain, leaving her blushing deeply in his arms. Saito sprints through the empty, dimly lit streets at full speed into the dead of night, carrying a feverish Akane in his arms toward the emergency room. Holding her slender, fragile body that feels as though it could shatter like glass, Saito suddenly feels a sharp sting in his foot and stumbles as he runs. Pushing through the sharp throbbing in his foot, Saito carries Akane into the clinic hallway, realizing how fragile she truly is beneath her fiery willpower. Saito asks why she never told him about her dream, to which a feverish Akane weakly replies that she feared he would dismiss it as impossible. Looking down at her with a gentle, reassuring smile, Saito tells her he knows she can do it, leaving Akane wide-eyed and deeply moved. As he continues sprinting, Saito tells Akane she can achieve anything because she's relentless, earning a weak smile from her as she admits she simply doesn't know how to quit. Saito sprints through the dark streets carrying Akane, reflecting on how they had never opened up about their deepest hopes and dreams until tonight. Pushing through the sharp pain in his injured foot, Saito holds a feverish Akane tightly, determined to save her now that he's finally beginning to understand the real girl behind the rivalry. Nestled in his arms as he runs under the streetlights, Akane weakly smiles and remarks on his strength, while Saito pushes forward through the night, filled with the desire to truly get to know her better. Carrying Akane down the moonlit road toward the hospital, Saito reflects on how marrying the girl he thought he hated started as a nightmare, but now feels certain their marriage can lead to a happy ending.